It was a bright, clear afternoon on July 19, 1989, as United Airlines Flight 232 prepared for its journey from Denver's Stapleton International Airport to Philadelphia International Airport, with a scheduled stop in Chicago. The McDonnell Douglas DC-10, a wide-bodied Trijet airliner known for its reliability and capacity, stood on the tarmac, its polished aluminum exterior gleaming under the summer sun. Passengers streamed through the jet bridge, boarding the aircraft with the usual mix of excitement, weariness, and routine indifference that accompanies air travel. Among them were families heading home from vacations, business travelers with briefcases in hand, and a few unaccompanied minors under the watchful care of flight attendants. The cabin buzzed with the low hum of conversation, the rustle of carry-on luggage being stowed, and the occasional cry of a restless child. For most, this was just another flight, another step in the rhythm of their lives. The cockpit, however, was a world of precision and focus. Captain Alfred C. Haynes, a seasoned pilot with over 30,000 flight hours, settled into the left seat, his hands moving with practiced ease over the controls. Beside him sat First Officer William Records, a capable and experienced co-pilot, and Flight Engineer Dudley Dvorak, whose role was to monitor the aircraft's systems and ensure everything operated smoothly. The crew exchanged brief, professional remarks as they ran through their pre-flight checks, their voices calm and measured. The DC-10 was a complex machine, but it was one they knew intimately. The aircraft's 3 engines, one mounted on, each wing and a third embedded in the tail, hummed to life, their power palpable even from inside the insulated cockpit. The flight plan was filed, the weather was clear, and the skies ahead promised a smooth journey. As the aircraft taxied to the runway, the flight attendants moved through the cabin, ensuring seatbelts were fastened, tray tables were stowed, and carry-on items were securely placed. Their smiles were warm, their movements efficient. The safety demonstration began, a routine so familiar to frequent flyers that many paid little attention, engrossed in books, magazines, or the view out the window. The DC-10 accelerated down the runway, its engines roaring as it lifted gracefully into the air. The landing gear retracted with a muffled thud, and the aircraft climbed steadily, leaving the sprawl of Denver behind. Below, the patchwork of farmland and suburbs gave way to the vast, open plains of the Midwest. The flight had begun, and for the next hour, everything proceeded as expected. At 37,000 feet, the DC-10 cruised smoothly through the clear skies. The cabin was a picture of tranquility. Passengers read, dozed, or chatted quietly. Some gazed out at the endless blue horizon, while others enjoyed the in-flight service, sipping coffee or nibbling on snacks. The flight attendants moved about, with quiet efficiency, their presence a reassuring constant. In the cockpit, the crew maintained their vigilance, monitoring the instruments and communicating with air traffic control. The autopilot handled the routine tasks, allowing the pilots to focus on the broader picture. It was, by all accounts, an ordinary flight, until it wasn't. At 3:16 p.m., a sudden, violent explosion shattered the calm. The tail-mounted number 2 engine, a General Electric CF66D turbofan, had suffered an uncontained failure. This was no minor malfunction. The engine disintegrated with catastrophic force, sending shrapnel tearing through the aircraft's hydraulic systems. In the cockpit, the crew was jolted by the noise and the shuddering of the aircraft. Warning lights flashed and alarms blared, a cacophony of sound and light that demanded immediate attention. Captain Haynes and his crew reacted with the precision of professionals, but the situation was unlike anything they had ever encountered. The DC-10 was designed with redundant systems, but the shrapnel from the exploding engine had severed all 3 hydraulic lines, leaving the aircraft with no means of controlling its flight surfaces. The ailerons, elevators, and rudder, essential for steering the plane, were rendered useless. The pilots struggled to comprehend the extent of the damage. The control yoke moved freely in their hands, but the aircraft did not respond. The DC-10 began to roll to the right, its nose pitching downward. The crew fought to stabilize the plane, but without hydraulic pressure, their efforts seemed futile. Captain Haynes later described the sensation as trying to steer a car without a steering wheel. The aircraft was, for all intents and purposes, uncontrollable, yet the crew refused to give up. Drawing on their training and experience, they began to experiment with the only tool they had left, the throttles. By adjusting the power to the two remaining engines, they discovered they could influence the plane's pitch and roll, albeit in a crude and imprecise manner. It was a desperate improvisation, but it offered a glimmer of hope. As the crew battled to keep the aircraft airborne, the passengers and flight attendants in the cabin were gripped by a growing sense of unease. The initial explosion had been terrifying, but the subsequent lurching and rolling of the plane were even more alarming. The cabin lights flickered, and the oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, a stark reminder of the gravity of the situation. Flight attendants moved quickly to assist passengers, their training overriding their own fear. They offered reassurance, helped with the masks, and ensured everyone was braced for the possibility of an emergency landing. The mood in the cabin was a mixture of fear, determination, and quiet resolve. Parents held their children close, couples clasped hands, and strangers exchanged words of encouragement. The human capacity for solidarity and courage began to shine through the chaos. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, the crew was in constant communication with air traffic control and United Airlines maintenance personnel. The situation was dire, but they were not alone. Controllers worked tirelessly to guide the crippled aircraft to the nearest suitable airport, Sioux Gateway Airport in Sioux City, Iowa. The airport was equipped with long runways and emergency services, making it the best option for an emergency landing. Captain Haynes and his crew knew the odds were against them. The DC-10 was descending, its movements erratic and unpredictable. The pilots had to make constant adjustments to the throttles, their hands moving with precision and urgency. The strain was immense, but they remained focused, their training and professionalism guiding them through the crisis. As the aircraft approached Sioux City, the crew prepared for what they knew would be a harrowing landing. The runway was in sight, but the DC-10 was far from stable. The pilots had no way to flare the aircraft, a standard maneuver to reduce speed and cushion the touchdown. Instead, they aimed for the runway and hoped for the best. The final moments were a blur of tension and determination. The aircraft touched down hard, its right wingtip striking the ground first. The impact tore the wing from the fuselage, sending the plane into a violent cartwheel. The cabin was filled with the sounds of tearing metal, shattering glass, and the screams of passengers. The DC-10 skidded across the runway, breaking apart as it went. Fire and smoke engulfed the wreckage, a grim testament to the force of the crash. Yet amid the devastation, there were signs of hope. Emergency responders were on the scene within minutes, their swift actions saving countless lives. Passengers and crew members, many injured but alive, emerged from the wreckage, their survival a testament to human resilience and the skill of the flight crew. In the end, 185 of the 296 people on board survived the crash, a miracle given the circumstances. The story of United Airlines Flight 232 would become a defining moment in aviation history, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the extraordinary courage that can emerge in the face of disaster. The scene at Sioux Gateway Airport was one of chaos and heroism. As the shattered remains of United Airlines Flight 232 came to a rest in a grotesque tangle of metal, smoke, and fire, the first responders were already in motion. Fire trucks, ambulances, and police vehicles raced across the tarmac, their sirens wailing in a dissonant chorus. The airport, a relatively small facility accustomed to regional flights and private aircraft, had suddenly become the epicenter of a disaster that would capture the world's attention. The responders, many of whom had never dealt with a crash, of this magnitude moved with a sense of urgency and purpose, their training kicking in, despite the overwhelming scale of the catastrophe. The DC-10 had broken into several large sections upon impact. The fuselage, once a seamless tube of aluminum, was now a jagged, gaping wreck. The tail section had separated entirely, coming to rest several hundred feet from the main body of the aircraft. The right wing, torn off during the crash, lay crumpled and burning near the runway. The left wing, though still attached, was mangled and leaking fuel, adding to the risk of further explosions. The cockpit, remarkably intact compared to the rest of the plane, was a surreal island of order amid the devastation. Inside, Captain Haynes, First Officer Records, and Flight Engineer Dvorak, battered and bruised but alive, were struggling to comprehend what had just happened. Their quick thinking and extraordinary skill had kept the plane airborne long enough to reach Sioux City, but the crash had been inevitable. Now their focus shifted to survival and the fate of the passengers and crew. In the cabin, the situation was dire. The force of the crash had thrown passengers and crew members around like rag dolls. Seats had been ripped from their moorings, luggage and debris were scattered everywhere, and the air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning fuel. Many passengers were injured, some critically. Broken bones, lacerations, and burns were common, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. Yet, amid the horror, there were moments of incredible bravery and compassion. Flight attendants, many of whom were injured themselves, worked tirelessly to help passengers. They guided people to emergency exits, assisted the injured, and provided comfort to those in shock. Passengers, too, rose to the occasion, helping one another to safety and offering words of encouragement. The human spirit, tested to its limits, shone brightly in the face of unimaginable adversity. Outside the wreckage, the first responders were confronted with a scene of almost surreal destruction. The fire crews immediately began dousing the flames, their efforts hampered by the sheer scale of the disaster. Ambulance crews moved in, triaging the injured and transporting them to waiting medical helicopters and ambulances. The most critically injured were rushed to nearby hospitals, while those with less severe injuries were treated on site. The responders worked with a sense of urgency, knowing that every second counted. Despite the chaos, there was a remarkable level of coordination and efficiency. Local hospitals had been alerted and were preparing to receive a large number of patients. Doctors, nurses, and other medical personnel were on standby, ready to provide the necessary care. As the initial shock began to subside, the scale of the miracle became apparent. Of the 296 people on board, 185 had survived. This was a remarkable figure, given the severity of the crash. Many of the survivors owed their lives to the skill and determination of the flight crew, who had managed to keep the plane airborne long enough to attempt a controlled crash landing. The design of the DC-10, with its robust construction and multiple safety features, had also played a role. The aircraft's ability to absorb the impact and remain largely intact had given many passengers a fighting chance. Additionally, the quick response of the emergency services had undoubtedly saved lives. The combination of human ingenuity, engineering, and sheer luck had resulted in a miracle that defied the odds. In the days that followed, the story of United Airlines Flight 232 dominated the news. The crash was analyzed from every angle, with experts and commentators speculating on what had gone wrong and how so many had managed to survive. The investigation, led by the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, would eventually determine that the cause of the crash was the failure of the tail-mounted engine, which had led to the loss of all hydraulic systems. The investigation also highlighted the extraordinary efforts of the flight crew, whose quick thinking and resourcefulness had saved countless lives. Captain Haynes, First Officer Records, and Flight Engineer Dvorak were hailed as heroes, their actions serving as a testament to the importance of training, experience, and calm under pressure. For the survivors, the crash was a life-changing event. Many would carry physical and emotional scars for the rest of their lives, but they also carried with them a profound sense of gratitude and resilience. The experience had shown them the fragility of life and the strength of the human spirit. In the years that followed, many of the survivors would form lasting bonds, united by their shared experience and the knowledge that they had been given a second chance. The story of United Airlines Flight 232 would become a symbol of hope and perseverance, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable disaster, the human spirit can endure and triumph. In the weeks and months following the crash of United Airlines, Flight 232, the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, launched a comprehensive investigation to determine the cause of the disaster and to identify ways to prevent similar tragedies in the future. The investigation was a massive undertaking, involving hundreds of experts from various fields, including aviation engineering, metallurgy, and human factors. The wreckage of the DC-10 was meticulously examined piece by piece in an effort to reconstruct the sequence of events that had led to the crash. The focus was not only on the mechanical failure of the tail-mounted engine, but also on the broader systemic issues that had contributed to the disaster. The investigation revealed that the uncontained failure of the No. 2 engine had been caused by a fatigue crack in the engine's fan disc. This crack, which had gone undetected during routine maintenance, had propagated over time until it finally gave way, causing the engine to disintegrate. The shrapnel from the exploding engine had severed all 3 hydraulic lines, leaving the aircraft with no means of controlling its flight surfaces. This was a critical vulnerability in the design of the DC-10, one that had not been fully appreciated until the crash of Flight 232. The NTSB's findings highlighted the need for more rigorous inspection protocols and the development of more robust hydraulic systems that could withstand such catastrophic failures. The investigation also shed light on the extraordinary efforts of the flight crew. Captain Haynes, First Officer Records, and Flight Engineer Dvorak had demonstrated remarkable skill and resourcefulness in their attempts to control the crippled aircraft. Their use of differential thrust to manipulate the plane's pitch and roll was a groundbreaking technique, one that had never been attempted in a real-world situation. The NTSB's report praised the crew for their quick thinking and calm under pressure, noting that their actions had undoubtedly saved many lives. The investigation also led to changes in pilot training programs, with an increased emphasis on manual flying skills and the ability to improvise in emergency situations. The crash of Flight 232 had a profound impact on the aviation industry. In the wake of the disaster, airlines and regulatory agencies around the world implemented a series of safety improvements designed to prevent similar accidents. These included enhanced inspection procedures for engine components, the development of more resilient hydraulic systems, and the introduction of new training programs for pilots. The lessons learned from the crash of Flight 232 were incorporated into the design of future aircraft, leading to significant advancements in aviation safety. The disaster also served as a stark reminder of the importance of continuous improvement and vigilance in the pursuit of safety. For the survivors and the families of those who had perished, the crash of Flight 232 was a life-altering event. Many of the survivors struggled with physical injuries and emotional trauma in the aftermath of the disaster, but they also found strength in their shared experience. Support groups and counseling services were established to help survivors and their families cope with the aftermath of the crash. Over time, many of the survivors formed lasting bonds, united by their shared ordeal and the knowledge that they had been given a second chance at life. The crash of Flight 232 became a defining moment in their lives, one that shaped their outlook and their relationships in profound ways. The legacy of United Airlines Flight 232 is one of resilience, innovation, and the enduring human spirit. The disaster highlighted the vulnerabilities of even the most advanced technology, but it also demonstrated the extraordinary capabilities of the human mind and body in the face of adversity. The story of Flight 232 is a testament to the importance of preparation, teamwork, and the willingness to adapt in the face of unforeseen challenges. It is a story of tragedy, but also of hope, and the enduring belief that, even in the darkest moments, there is always the possibility of a miracle. As the years passed, the crash of Flight 232 became a case study in aviation safety, taught in training programs and discussed in industry conferences around the world. The lessons learned from the disaster continue to inform the design and operation of modern aircraft, ensuring that the legacy of Flight 232 is one of progress and improvement. The story of the crash and its aftermath serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of vigilance, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of safety in the aviation industry. It is a story that will not be forgotten, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring quest for knowledge and improvement. In the years following the crash of United Airlines Flight 232, the human stories of survival, loss, and resilience began to emerge, painting a vivid picture of the profound impact the disaster had on the lives of those involved. Each survivor carried with them a unique narrative, a personal account of the moments that had defined their experience and shaped their lives in the aftermath. These stories, though deeply personal, were interconnected by the shared trauma of the crash and the collective effort to rebuild and move forward. The ripple effects of the disaster extended far beyond the immediate aftermath, touching communities, industries, and the broader field of aviation safety. For many survivors, the crash was a defining moment that altered the course of their lives. Some found themselves grappling with physical injuries that required years of rehabilitation and adaptation. Broken bones, spinal injuries, and burns left lasting scars, both visible and invisible. The emotional toll was equally significant, with many survivors experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, anxiety, and depression. The memories of the crash, the deafening explosion, the violent lurching of the plane, the chaos of the impact, haunted their dreams and colored their waking hours. Yet amid the pain and struggle, there were stories of remarkable resilience and determination. Survivors spoke of finding strength they never knew they had, of drawing on the support of loved ones and the camaraderie of fellow survivors to rebuild their lives. One such survivor was a young mother traveling with her 2 children. She had been seated near the rear of the plane, an area that suffered some of the most severe damage during the crash. In the moments after impact, she had fought through the smoke and debris to locate her children, her maternal instincts overriding her own fear and pain. Miraculously, all 3 survived, though they bore the physical and emotional scars of the experience. In the years that followed, the mother became an advocate for aviation safety, sharing her story to raise awareness and push for improvements in aircraft design and emergency procedures. Her courage and determination inspired others, turning her personal tragedy into a force for positive change. The families of those who perished in the crash faced their own unique challenges. For them, the disaster was a sudden and devastating loss, one that left a void that could never be filled. Parents, spouses, children, and friends were left to grapple with the grief of losing a loved one in such a traumatic and public manner. Many found solace in the support of their communities and the shared experience of other families affected by the crash. Memorials and tributes were held to honor the victims, providing a space for collective mourning and remembrance. Over time, some families channeled their grief into advocacy, working to ensure that the lessons learned from the crash would lead to meaningful changes in aviation safety. The crash of Flight 232 also had a profound impact on the aviation industry, prompting a wave of introspection and reform. Airlines and regulatory agencies around the world took a hard look at their safety protocols and procedures, seeking to identify and address potential vulnerabilities. The investigation into the crash had revealed critical flaws in the design of the DC-10's hydraulic systems, as well as gaps in maintenance and inspection practices. In response, manufacturers and operators implemented a series of changes aimed at preventing similar accidents in the future. These included the development of more robust hydraulic systems, enhanced inspection protocols for critical components, and the introduction of new training programs for pilots and maintenance personnel. One of the most significant outcomes of the crash was the increased emphasis on crew resource management, CRM, in pilot training. The extraordinary efforts of Captain Haynes and his crew had demonstrated the importance of effective communication, teamwork, and decision-making in emergency situations. In the years following the crash, CRM became a cornerstone of pilot training programs, with a focus on developing the skills and mindset needed to handle unexpected challenges. The lessons learned from Flight 232 were incorporated into simulators and training scenarios, ensuring that future generations of pilots would be better prepared to respond to emergencies. The legacy of Flight 232 also extended to the broader field of aviation safety research. The crash prompted a renewed focus on understanding the human factors that contribute to accidents, as well as the development of new technologies to enhance safety. Advances in materials science, for example, led to the creation of more durable and resilient engine components, reducing the risk of catastrophic failures. Similarly, improvements in aircraft design and systems integration helped to mitigate the impact of potential failures, enhancing the overall safety of air travel. For the community of Sioux City, the crash of Flight 232 was a moment of both tragedy and heroism. The first responders who had rushed to the scene that day had performed with extraordinary courage and professionalism, saving countless lives in the process. The city's hospitals and medical personnel had risen to the challenge, providing critical care to the injured under immense pressure. In the years that followed, the community came together to honor the victims and survivors, ensuring that the memory of the crash would not be forgotten. Memorials and commemorative events served as a reminder of the resilience and compassion that had emerged in the face of disaster. The story of United Airlines Flight 232 is one of tragedy and triumph, of loss and resilience. It is a story that underscores the fragility of life and the extraordinary capacity of the human spirit to endure and overcome. The crash left an indelible mark on the lives of those who experienced it, shaping their stories and their legacies in profound ways. It also served as a catalyst for change, driving advancements in aviation safety that have made air travel safer for millions of people around the world. The lessons learned from Flight 232 continue to resonate, a testament to the enduring impact of that fateful day in July 1989. Years turned into decades, and the story of United Airlines Flight 232 became etched into the annals of aviation history, not just as a tale of tragedy, but as a testament to human resilience, innovation, and the unyielding pursuit of safety. The crash, which had once dominated headlines and shaken the aviation industry, gradually receded from public consciousness, but its lessons and legacy endured. For those who had lived through it, the survivors, the families of the victims, the first responders, and the aviation professionals, the memory of that day remained vivid, a defining moment that shaped their lives and careers. The survivors of Flight 232, now scattered across the country and the world, carried with them the indelible marks of their experience. Some found solace in sharing their stories, becoming advocates for aviation safety or motivational speakers who inspired. Others with their tales of survival and perseverance. Others chose to live quietly, finding strength in the ordinary rhythms of life, their resilience a quiet testament to the human capacity to heal. Many survivors maintained connections with one another, bound by the shared trauma and the unspoken, understanding that only they could truly comprehend. Reunions, both formal and informal, became a way to honor the past and celebrate the gift of survival. These gatherings were often emotional, filled with tears and laughter, as survivors recounted their experiences and reflected on how far they had come. For the families of those who had perished, the passage of time brought a measure of peace, though the loss remained a permanent part of their lives. Memorials, both physical and virtual, served as places of remembrance and reflection. In Sioux City, a permanent memorial was erected near the airport, a solemn tribute to the 1 to 12 lives lost and a reminder of the heroism displayed that day. The memorial featured a sculpture of a phoenix rising from the ashes, symbolizing hope and renewal. For many families, visiting the memorial became an annual tradition, a way to honor their loved ones and find comfort in the collective memory of the community. The aviation industry, too, continued to honor the legacy of Flight 232. The crash had been a turning point, a stark reminder of the need for constant vigilance and innovation in the pursuit of safety. The lessons learned from the disaster were woven into the fabric of aviation, influencing everything from aircraft design to pilot training to emergency response protocols. The concept of crew resource management, CRM, which had been highlighted by the extraordinary efforts of Captain Haynes and his crew, became a cornerstone of aviation training worldwide. Pilots and flight crews were now better equipped to handle emergencies, their training emphasizing teamwork, communication, and adaptability. Advances in technology also played a crucial role in enhancing aviation safety. The development of more robust engine components, improved hydraulic systems, and advanced diagnostic tools reduced the risk of catastrophic failures. Aircraft manufacturers incorporated redundant systems and fail-safes, ensuring that even in the event of a major malfunction, planes could remain controllable. The introduction of real-time data monitoring and predictive maintenance allowed airlines to identify and address potential issues before they could escalate into emergencies. These innovations, driven in part by the lessons of Flight 232, made air travel safer than ever before. The story of Flight 232 also had a profound impact on the field of human factors research. The crash had underscored the importance of understanding how people interact with technology and how human error could contribute to accidents. In the years following the disaster, researchers focused on developing systems and procedures that accounted for human limitations and strengths. This holistic approach to safety, which considered both the technical and human elements of aviation, became a model for other industries, from healthcare to nuclear power. For the city of Sioux City, the crash of Flight 232 remained a defining moment in its history. The bravery and professionalism displayed by the first responders had become a source of pride for the community. The city's emergency services, which had been tested to their limits that day, emerged stronger and more prepared for future challenges. The lessons learned from the response to the crash were incorporated into disaster preparedness plans, ensuring that the city was better equipped to handle emergencies of all kinds. The annual commemorations of the crash served as a reminder of the resilience and compassion that had emerged in the face of tragedy. As the years passed, the story of Flight 232 took on a broader significance, becoming a symbol of hope and the enduring human spirit. It was a story of ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances, of courage and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. It was a story of loss, but also of survival, of tragedy, but also of triumph. The legacy of Flight 232 was not just in the lessons learned or the lives saved, but in the reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always the possibility of light. In the end, the story of United Airlines Flight 232 was a testament to the power of human ingenuity, the importance of preparation, and the resilience of the human spirit. It was a story that would continue to inspire and inform, a reminder that the pursuit of safety and the quest for knowledge are never-ending journeys. And as the years turned into decades, the memory of that day in July 1989 would endure, a beacon of hope and a call to never forget.